to just begin this entire thing, I mean, how did you become the young CEO, or how did you become the CEO? I would look forward to Bhairavi getting started, or anybody. I mean, just go for it.
Peter, do you want to take it?
Come on, be ladies first, keeping with all the
No, equality, yeah, that's what feminism is, equality.
Yes, and that's why I'm intentionally saying, especially around the IWD just getting over yesterday, and still the continuity is what we'll have to set the stage for.
Sure. I mean, look, Tony, if it's okay, I'll go first, and then you guys feel free to jump in.
Okay.
Cool. Actually, I think in my case, Priya, to just put a lighter spin on it, I think being laid off was a great start to start the journey,
Okay.
having worked in TV production. But Bhairavi knows this, and just a little bit of background is that I'm just being very candid here because I'm comfortable with all of you, and that's the whole point of this discussion. I come from a background of privilege, pretty much born with a silver spoon, had anything that I wanted pretty much when I was younger. But as a result of that, being born into a big business family, it's very easy. People tell you, why do you need to work and things like that. So, but I've always believed you have one life, right? And I think I used to follow ice hockey when I was younger. I know it's a bit silly to say that, because following ice hockey in Chennai is a bit silly in the 45-degree heat. But there was a very well-known player, and I'm sure Tony knows as well. They just call it hockey in North America. We call it ice hockey, but called Wayne Gretzky is the name of the player, legend of the game. And his quote always resonated with me when I was younger, and that is, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Wow.
Which is so apt. So that's when I felt, you know what, I don't want to study business. Let me study psychology, something I like. And just fell in love with video content from a very young age. Because when I grew up, news channels were very different. However hard-hitting a bulletin was, the last story would always be a puppy playing with the baby, or something like that, just to leave the viewer with a feel-good factor. So as a result of that, I said, you know what, I want to get out of this. Yes, there was a bit of apprehension and concern being born into such a legacy. You're breaking out of that tradition. But, you have to do it. And if you fail, you fail. But at least you tried, right? So that was, I think that's what probably got me here. I'm sure Tony and Bhairavi will agree that we're all still learning. I think a lot of us fail more than we succeed. But here we are. So that's how it all happened. And then when I was working for a production company here, ended up getting that pink slip and being laid off. And then that sort of drove me to say, you know what, if I don't start now, maybe it's a sign from above that I'll have to go back and join the family. So let me start my own business. So so I guess a bit of luck, a bit of passion, all sort of merged into one.
Wonderful, wonderful. What were your mindsets, Viru, or any specific beliefs that you had that actually accelerated all of this?
I think in the beginning, and again, I keep bringing Bhairavi back into this because we've on this journey together, it's very difficult when there's a stereotype, right? Okay, you're a rich boy, so things will be easy for you. And I've always said, and I've discussed this with her offline, you can't pick your family, Priya. You can only pick your friends. So initially the mindset was prove people wrong, prove people wrong, prove people wrong. You know what, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. Soon I realized you don't need to do that. You're in a visual space, so you can actually inspire people through your content. But it was difficult because during that phase, I did go through dyslexia when I was younger. So that was also hard. So being, failed a year and things like that when I was a lot younger. So that was difficult. But I was constantly reminded, that, you don't need to work, you don't need to work. So even when I started the company, that was sort of the general consensus for most of the family. But then, as much as I say you don't want to prove people wrong, sometimes it's nice to do that with the work that you're doing. So it was difficult to answer your question, but through the positive stories that we're able to tell, in a nice way, it's good to shut people up.
Good. Now, Tony, how about yourself? How did all this, how did you arrive basically?
Yep. I'm actually an entrepreneur by accident. So I was working as a consultant after business school, and I got super burned out. went to work at United Airlines in strategy. And working strategy at a huge company that makes no money is essentially just herding cats. So I was getting my work done by like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was like, I need a hobby or something, and was watching Shark Tank one night. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show. And I remembered back to a friend from business school who had bought a business on Craigslist. And so I looked in Chicago and there was a Merry Maids for sale, and that wasn't my jam, and looked back at my hometown in Green Bay and saw a tent rental business for sale, and reached out to my brother-in-law and said, hey, I'll do the back office stuff if you want to do the setups and everything. And he was interested, and everything from there is kind of history. We bought the tent rental business from one person, and then he wanted to sell his, tent manufacturing business. And so that happened in 2014. So kind of by accident. I've been going through this great program called, it's Optimize coaching program. It's optimize.me. And they were just talking about a book a couple weeks ago called The Second Mountain by David Brooks, which is a great book about, you get to the top of the first mountain, which for me was consulting, and realized you don't necessarily like what's up there, and you can see that there's now a second mountain behind it. And so I feel like I'm kind of climbing my second mountain. And they always say the first mountain is the mountain that everyone kind of wants you to climb, or society says you should climb. And then the second mountain is the one that you actually can get to your sense of fulfillment personally, professionally, etc. So I was going to try to pull in a Wayne Gretzky quote, because I feel like it's weird that Viru is quoting him, but I got nothing. So, but you did, something you said resonated with me. Failing more than succeeding. Right behind my monitor, I can see I have a Charlie Brown trying to kick the football and get it pulled out from under him, and it said succeed through failure. And that's kind of a good reminder.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Good. What challenges taught you the most, Tony, in this context?
I think it was the switch from, I was working with a ton of really smart people, and it went from being all these people on my team to just kind of being me and trying to grow this business. So I had guys on my team who were the captain of the Harvard football team and Rhodes Scholars and super smart, and having to go in and do everything myself from the start, and then having to grow the business from there and add people to the leadership team. It's been a nice journey. The last 3 years, we've been able to add a lot of great people to the team, which has allowed me to focus on what brings me energy and what brings me joy, which is a lot of the big picture visionary stuff. Some of the day-to-day execution, I can do it. It doesn't give me energy, kind of drains my battery. So.
Wonderful. So it's like identifying the right people for the right roles, right? So do what your passion can actually accelerate.
Yeah, we call it right person, right seat. Yep.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Good. Thanks, Tony. And Bhairavi, what got you here? I mean, it's been an interesting set of inflections you mentioned. So what got you here in this Mitra Trust?
No, both what Viru and Tony said, there's just so much of resonance. Very similar to Viru in that very privileged background. Parents, both of them serial entrepreneurs, constantly working. I remember my first job, they're like, oh, you're a girl, you don't need to work. Or you come from this kind of a family, you don't need to work. And I was like, what do you mean? My parents earn, I mean, they have to, seen them sell businesses, get acquired, sell. That's what they did. So I didn't know what they were talking about. And early on, when I said I wanted to do psychology, everybody was like, well, what will you do with a psychology degree? I was like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. Because at that point in time, all you could do with psychology was be a teacher or get into research. And, there were lots of concerns about the kind of lifestyle that I'm used to, and would I be okay? And what does that look like? Mm-hmm. So from a very early stage, just going off the beaten path, because most of my friends, I didn't do an MBA, I did a master's with psychology, but I was an entrepreneur. I learned on the job how to set up a team, how to figure out what a pilot was, how to do key stakeholder management, to do super interesting, awesome stuff, which came out of passion, which didn't come out of somebody sitting on top and telling me that, hey, this is your vision. No, I was creating my own vision, and I loved that. And I love to see the benefit that it gave. And we did school mental health program, like India's first for-profit school mental health program. Mm-hmm. And the way that grew and the way that scaled, and in 3 years, we were like profitable, and we were across 7 schools in the city. It was awesome. But then, reflecting Tony, I was completely burnt out at 28. I had a major health issue. There was undiagnosed depression. I didn't realize that that's what it was, which is why for the next few years, as everybody would call it, those were my floating years. I was like, okay, let's try tech, let's try this. I was consulting. I was always doing something, always creating something, but it didn't ever get me anywhere. And that's when like the journey inward began to understand, okay, what does depression look like? How does it manifest? What are the things that I need to understand about myself? Because, you know, you hear 5 depression stories and your story is still not reflected. You just see the signs and symptoms. It doesn't mean anything. And that's where this whole sort of reason for Mitra comes up. Mitra means friend. So we wanted to, one, provide mental health information and tools in a way that a trusted friend would. And the second part of it was accessibility, because in India still there's a lot of stigma around mental health.
True.
More than that, you know, therapy is expensive and everybody looks at mental health and they think it's only therapy, but there's so much more. Like you'd mentioned Bharatanatyam, you're a dancer, you're trained, you know how to identify your emotions and work through it and get it out of your body. Most
True.
people don't know that, they don't understand
Right.
that, they don't see that, they don't see the importance of emotion. And in this parallel journey was, as a woman, as being a woman leader and a woman entrepreneur, what does that look like? Most of the, you know, in the corporate world, most of my managers and leaders were all men, and I've seen so many different types of male leaders. I've seen them cry, I've seen them scream, I've seen them shout, but very few women leaders, and they were always termed, you know what, no matter what they did, and that wasn't fair. So, and this whole notion of if you're kind, if you're nice, if you're compassionate, you're going to get taken advantage of. And that's what I, you know, where I am right now and what we've been doing with Mitra in the past 3 years and the kind of people that we work with, because most of the people that work with us have mental health issues, you know, they're living their truth and they want to contribute. So you have to deal with compassion.
I know.
You have to be connected to a different part of you. While yes, you know, it's super important for deadlines. We work with a lot of corporate clients as well. It's super important with all of that. But at the same time, learning to manage your own mental health while you deliver great work. And our work has been recognized. We've been, you know, shortlisted for awards with BNI and all of this really cool stuff. But at the same time, we're doing it from a place of truth. We're doing it from a place of authenticity. And it's not easy to do that. It's not easy to live your truth that way.
Wonderful.
I like to use the term authenticity. I think not a lot of people practice authentic leadership. I always found it hard. You're a different person at home than you are at work. And then my goal for the last couple of years is to be the same person in both places and to be authentic, be vulnerable. And I think that's been great for myself and for my team.
I think one of the things I like, Priya, is that if you look at Tony's, and for those people watching this and eventually that will, you know, enjoy this, hopefully, Tony's LinkedIn, it actually says Chief Joy Officer.
Yes.
If I remember correctly, I think it does. Yep. I saw it last time, which is really cool because, you know, that's what it's about. You know, just pick, and even I think, by the way, I mean, if you'll agree with me and correct me if I'm wrong, there's no rule book, right? Like some people say MBA, study, do this, you know, sometimes the more degrees you do, it's going to help you find the right book in the library. That's it. You know, and that's just, okay, it's just my opinion, but I just feel if your business makes sense and if you're passionate about it, and you have that self-belief, yes, there is a revenue element. The revenue will find you. There's no hard and fast rule. You've got to do this. You've got to do the MBA. You've got to do this. No, 2020 has taught us that none of the rules work.
Absolutely.
And that's where Viru, you know, I was talking about how I went off the beaten path, and you have as well. We know so many people who are very clearly on the path. And it's not like their lives are any less fulfilling. They're doing great, but it just wasn't a right fit for me. It just wasn't a right fit for you. Yeah. But there are people who can be on the path and still, you know, grow to being a CEO within an organization, and that's totally fine as well. Yeah. And entrepreneurship teaches you that. It teaches you that it is hard. There is no easy way out there. Like you're dealing with your inner demons on a day-to-day basis. If you want to do any inner journey work, like become an entrepreneur. You're just dealing with your shadow self like constantly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I find when I'm trying to determine how successful I've been, it's really, has what I've been doing brought me joy? Because that's where we have, the only thing you can't get back is time. And so I'm not going to spend 10 years doing something that I hate, getting out of bed every single morning. So that's been a good driver for me. And I've actually taken a step back, and I get a lot of people who call entrepreneurs who are like, hey, I want to do a search fund. And I did the like most abnormal search in the world, just found a business on Craigslist. But I always encourage them to step back, because they're thinking like, I want to be in this industry with this EBITDA. And I always tell them to step back and say, what are your values and what's important to you? And what are your virtues? Like, what things are your strengths that are going to bring you joy? That are going to feel effortless and that are going to get you energized.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and Tony, just jumping in there's this really cool concept called the wound gift concept. And especially when you're in social change and you're a change maker, you look at all the things that you've been maybe wounded by, and you figure out what your burning is. So for me, if I just look at the depression arc and the mental health arc, there are so many things that have happened, but also so many skills that I have over there that I'm able to kind of tap into and, bring light into that wound and not have it in darkness. And looking at what you want to do to kind of fit that passion and purpose that way is a great framework as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. I mean, I just got reminded when Bhairavi, you were talking about emotions, right? And people hardly even express it. And you're having people who are actually going through all of this depression to actually work on helping others, right? So this tells me, because when I'm as a dancer, at least in the last 8 or 9 years, I've stopped actually formally performing. I'm actually working with people who have no connection to dance, which is all the leaders and things. And so one of the things that I use is archetypes, right? You must have heard of this Carl Pearson's archetypes and things like that. And I remember when I asked some of them to use an Indian dance on Krishna and his mother Yashoda, the character in the story. And when Yashoda is not even the biological mother, and when I'm asking them to do that emotion of taking care of the child, young baby, they actually start crying. I've had almost about 10 or 12 CEOs who have been, in such senior positions, but they had tears in their eyes. They said, look, I've given up so much to actually I've never thought about it. I didn't have time to even tap into that emotion of the caregiver, right? I've actually worked hard for my family, but I have not really seen things. So those are emotions that hardly people really tap into. And I'm also seeing a lot of people piling on too many things in their plate in front of them. So it's like, I want to do this. And today we are living in an age of choices, and the zillennials or the millennials, all of them, they live in the area of, they have so many choices, but they're hardly able to take off what they don't want. So what are you going to stop doing to achieve more? Whereas people keep adding more to their plate to say, I want this, I want that. And that's where I think, coming in contact with your emotions and then learning to take your focus from there on could be a great effort for some of the leaders in the present era.
Absolutely. And it also links to what Tony said, right? In terms of figure out what your values are, figure out what drives you. And if you want to base it on that, then you have a super clear path ahead of you.
Absolutely. And that's where I'm thinking it's like, align your performance to your potential, to the larger purpose, right? It's like having this vertical coherence to all this great performance that you're having, and you're aligning to ensure that your future potential is there, and it's also connecting to the larger purpose. So you're not reaching a destination through a zigzag route, but trying to build that straight route instead of getting all the distractions out of the way.
Yeah, a point you said resonated with me there, Priya, about saying no to things, and deciding what you're not going to do is just as important as deciding what you're going to do. And I feel like a lot of people have all these things they say they're not going to do, but either through their family or expectations of society, you keep doing them. And so I, for a while, had 3 businesses, and I defined my success by how much I did, not how well I did. And so I like the phrase, a whole ass one thing, don't half-ass 2 things. Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear on the podcast, but that's the worst it's going to get, I promise.
Yes.
Sometimes you've got to, as they say, right? I mean, I found it with our businesses as well. You can only grow by letting go. Simple as that. You have to, you've got to delegate. You can't do everything. But we all have the passion. We want to be everywhere, but
yes,
sometimes it's important. It's also important for our own mental health and physical health to just sort of, take that step back.
And Priya,
Absolutely.
you were also talking about like choices, right? And the amount
Yes.
of choices that are there.
Yeah.
This takes me back to a conversation with my first boss, who's now my mentor.
Mhm.
And I was trying to like figure out what I wanted to do. And I was like, I think I'm going to leave HR. And he was like, but you've been working towards this for so long and you're so good at it. I was like, no, but that's not, something feels right. I'm not able to articulate what it, and you know, you're so young at that point in time. There's
Yes.
just so much of pressure to make the right decision.
Correct.
And he said, I feel bad for your generation, like you millennials, you have so many choices. And then you just, it's almost like a paralysis that then comes in. And at
Yes.
that point, I wasn't able to understand it. But looking back now, just the multiple parts that are there, and that's just grown so much of all the things that you can do. And just you look left, right, and there are people who are constantly hustling. They have a side hustle, they have a hobby, they're doing a podcast, they have a blog, but they're also making money out of this, and they're still in college. And they're
Yes.
still trying to get the engineering degree. And I'm like, how are you doing so many things? But that's their reality today.
Yes.
That's what they have to do to, or feel they have to do, or society is saying they have to do, or that's what's being recognized,
True.
for them to stand out and to be seen as exceptional. So the bar's constantly getting higher and higher and higher, and the choices are constantly like expanding. I don't even know in terms of like math what that equation would be for expansion, but it's a
True.
lot.
True. And the word collaboration is something that I find, especially in the entrepreneurial world, to be absolutely misguiding. I mean, you see somebody and they say, oh, wow, let's collaborate. And I really can't understand what let's collaborate mean. Is it going to help you multiply what you have, or is it going to be a distraction, this collaboration? And I often see in entrepreneurial zones, a lot of collaborations are actually distractions.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'll
Do you
use.
have any such experiences, Tony or Viru?
Well, I'll use the example of a birthday cake, right? You have a bunch of candles, and if you blow them out, if you blow on the cake, the candles all blow out, right?
Yeah.
If you blow on a fire, what happens? The fire gets bigger, right?
Yeah.
So it's doing a lot of little small things, easy to snuff it out if you're focused with your energy on that one thing. Those obstacles we've talked about, all the wind blowing is not going to put your fire out. It's actually going to make your fire go bigger.
Absolutely. Very interesting.
Yeah. And there's space for everybody to exist, Priya, these days. I mean, like in Bhairavi's case, okay, fine, mental health now. Yes, it's amazing. Last 5-6 years, we've seen a massive paradigm shift in a good way, but still things need to get better. But like what she's doing, there have been, other individuals and organizations that have come up, and there's both of them can exist together. There's no problem.
Yes.
So, which is what even I was saying in the content game, if there's so much greed, everyone's trying to outdo the other, who's getting the best deal. At the end of the day, and even in a small place like Singapore, there are 5-6 million people. You may not get the best deal with the biggest corporates, but you can still do 10-15 projects for not-for-profits who are doing meaningful work and still make that impact. You know what I mean? So I totally see your point. Yes, I am of the view that let's collaborate and not compete, but the collaboration should be with the right intentions.
Correct.
That's very, very important. Both sides, it has to work properly. Simple. It's like what we're doing now. Simple as that.
Absolutely.
I've seen the downside of that as well, because you end up saying yes with the intention that it's going to work out, and then expectations change and you want to get out of it, and it gets really, really hard. And this isn't the only thing you're doing, right? You're doing how many ever other things. So having the ability to have those conversations and have expectations set up at the start is one of the skills that I've learned because of miscommunications and like hardships that I faced and, relationships blowing up, just because expectations weren't set clearly. And it's a cultural factor as well, especially, the way that we're brought up. It's like, if somebody asks you, you say yes, and you try to do it. But then more and more and more, it drains you. And you have to start doing that check-in of what's giving me energy, what's draining my energy, where's that coming from? And doing that inventory is so important. And based on that, having that conversation and setting those expectations also becomes super important.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Good. I mean, a lot of discussion around this arriving, right? And I don't know if there's any other things that we've missed. Any of you can pitch in here before we move to the next segment.
I feel like we're constantly arriving. I don't know if there's any
Yeah.
point in which like I've arrived. It's a constant
I
process.
think the day you feel that you've, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I mean, unless it's Elon Musk or Eduardo Saverin or someone, but you constantly, when you feel that, okay, this is done, either that's when you stop or that's when you lose passion, one of the two. So
True.
yeah.
True, the constant arriving. That's why they say have that. Sometimes I ask this question to my coaches who are leaders. They say, what would your 8-year-old self do in this situation, right? And that's where they actually hit back to say, you know what, I don't know. And that's the answer, because they've lost contact with that being that new same person every day, right? They've just gotten into the grind so much.